Sup flappers, welcome back to another video. So if this is the first time you're here on my channel, I make discussion videos, guide videos, rant videos, meme videos, all about Genshin Impact. I upload daily. So if you enjoy this kind of content and you want somebody to have discussions with, make sure to subscribe. You can comment below. I read almost all of my comments within the first 2 to 3 days. All right, so I respond to some people who have inquiries, who have questions, or who just wants to engage in an active discussion. If you want to take it a step further, you can join my Discord. Always in there to discuss with you guys regarding these things more casually from time to time. All right, but definitely if you do want to leave your input, just leave it down below in the comments. Now without further ado, let's get into the video. So this will be kind of a follow-up video from yesterday's video where I talked about Electro most likely needing more buffs and how the current buffs that are brought in patch 1.6 right now are not for Electro. Then again, it's our fault for assuming that it was going to be for Electro, even though MiHoYo never specifically mentioned they were for Electro. And of course, we should have seen this one coming, that they were going to release a new 5-star Anemo character, and Anemo was also in a bit of an awkward place as well. So of course they went ahead and buffed that elemental mastery aspect of Anemo, and now it's just super. I would say, like, if you give Sucrose enough resources, she can outperform even Kaching in certain scenarios, right? It's pretty insane how much better now Anemo is sitting at. So back to Electro. So with Electro, I do think that do not worry with what they did to Anemo. It's without a doubt that a buff will be coming for Electro. I guarantee you, I will bet my consolation for Jean on the fact that an Electro buff will be coming. And I think at this point, most of the community are desperate for an Electro buff. I made a poll yesterday and, well, earlier today actually. It's just overwhelming. Over 90%, I'll throw it up on screen. Over 90% of the player base are like, yes, please, we need a dedicated Electro buff. And to those people, don't worry. In this video, we'll talk about 2 aspects that I think Electro definitely needs some changes towards. And if just these 2 changes happen, it'll put Electro in a much better spot. And they have to do with the reactions. All right, first and foremost, the overload reaction, and then we'll talk about the Electro charge reactions, because I think Super Conduct sits in a pretty nice place, and then we got the Swirl and Crystallized, right? So, and of course, Dendro is coming up, but we're not going to touch on that in this video. First, let's talk about Overload. I do think Overload, there needs to be some changes regarding the Overloads. First and foremost, scaling needs to be increased if you want Electro to be some sort of a DPS element. Yesterday, we talked about MiHoYo wanting to push Electro to a more supportive role. What I mean by that is not a support role, a more supportive role. Characters that potentially can fit into support DPS or just support. Like we got Fischl, we got Beidou. Kaching can kind of be a support DPS, I guess, if you're running a quick swap team, but not really in that regards. And of course, we have Razor, who's a main DPS, but currently is not really an Electro. He's an Electro character who deals a lot of physical damage, and so he just happens to be Electro. So going forward, we need Electro reactions to start mattering. So if you want Electro to become a main DPS, we need Overload to stop hitting mobs away. We need to get rid of that. And what we instead should do is take the current Electro charge stat and put it into Overload. So Overload will, instead of blowing mobs away, should start stuttering mobs, okay? And if you want Overload to be a main DPS source, we also have to give them the same treatment as Vaporize and Melt. So bring that up to a 2.0 multiplier and then have it stutter enemies. So that's a really powerful reaction then, just like that. And of course, you can only get the 2.0 reaction if you apply Pyro and then proc with Electro. And that's going to be the first major changes, I think, personally, to Electro that will push Electro into a better position. I do think currently Electro has an identity crisis. It's never going to out-support certain Anemo characters, right? Or just Anemo in general, or Geo for that matter. Geo has some great supports as well, mainly just Zhongli, maybe Albedo. And when we bring it to the DPS role, it's never going to out DPS Pyro and even some Cryo characters as well. So really stuck in the middle here. Push it in either or direction. Having these wishy-washy in the middle of the pack elements, we've seen it for months now. It doesn't work. So let's just push it in one direction. And if we're pushing it for main DPS, Overload needs to change. It needs to stop hitting away, stutter. And so now we move on to Electro Charge. What does Electro Charge need to do? I think Electro Charge should function something like Freeze, but not really. While right now, currently, it's giving us an opportunity to stutter enemies and have chain damage linked all across the battlefield, I do think that what we can do with Electro Charge is we can give it a stun. So what happens is this chain lightning happens and it gives us a stun, and it stuns all enemies for, let's say, 1.5 seconds or maybe 2 seconds, right? We can work with that. It can the duration of the stun can work up as you maybe get more elemental mastery or your character's levels are higher, whatever. But give that stun and give it an internal timer. So after the 2 seconds are up, enemies cannot be stunned for 2 seconds, 3 seconds, whatever MiHoYo wants. And then if you apply it again, it can stun them again. So instead of a stutter, which is like overload, which can be more interruptive, this function as a stun. And this stun can work maybe for certain bigger mobs as well, and maybe even bosses. It depends on how MiHoYo wants to balance it. And then immediately these 2 reactions will have a purpose in the game, right? Each of their team comps will seem to have more purpose. You want to keep enemies permanently frozen, then you have a freeze. If you want to just stun them periodically and just interrupt enemy skills into certain channeling, like currently I think the Cryo Sinsen Mage has a channel, Electro Sinsen Mage has a channel, right? And then now you can interrupt these channeling, right? Interrupting the enemies can be a more precise decision. It can be something that is now calculated into a team build. Currently, right now, Overload doesn't really blow away the bigger mobs. It does only for the smaller mobs. And interruptions to enemy channeling skills are very iffy because some skills can't interrupt smaller mobs, but they can't interrupt bigger mobs. But some characters have, like Klee has a charge attack that can interrupt bigger mobs. It's just so all up in the air right now. And I think having a dedicated elemental reaction that serves this purpose can really help us solidify Electro's role in the game. And they actually satisfy both, because if you want to make Electro a more offensive build, which I think currently MiHoYo themselves are trying this as well. They're trying to give options for offensive gameplay, but at the same time leave room for supportive roles, right? So Overload is going to be the dedicated offensive option here, just like Vaporize, just like Melt, and then Electro Charge can be some sort of like a support DPS or even a pure support option for Hydro-based teams. I think just with these 2 changes to begin with is going to be great. I do think if MiHoYo is just going to tune the numbers and not touch any of the reaction and what they do, Electro might have more niche plays even after the buffs. Because right now, I mean, Vaporize is just Vaporize. There's no additional BS attached to Vaporize. It's just you deal a ton of damage. Nothing really happens to the mob. It's literally just this and this together equals big numbers, right? But somehow Overload is like this plus this gives you mediocre damage, but oh, by the way, everything flies in all different directions and you gotta chase them down. It's bizarre. I don't think we need something as crazy. I do think that MiHoYo really don't need to overthink this, tuning some numbers and just making sure that the reactions are oh, MiHoYo, please. I don't know what to say, guys. I really want to hear your suggestions. I need to hear from the community. What do you guys think MiHoYo need to do with Overload or with Electro? What does MiHoYo have to do to make sure that this element stays relatively balanced and as well as becoming part of the meta options? They're doing something. They're doing something. I don't know if they're ever going to ask for our feedback or they're just going to go ahead and do it. I don't think they asked for our feedbacks with the Geo Resonance, right? I know people say MiHoYo tends for Electro to be like the battery element, which I also think is each element is their own battery. We talk about batteries in a team. When you bring Hu Tao, you bring Bennett as a battery. When you bring Kaching, you bring Fischl as a battery. When you bring Eula, you bring Chi-Chi as a battery. If we bring the same element as battery, you don't need Electro to be a battery. The game has evolved. The game has changed from MiHoYo's initial conception of it. And now MiHoYo, they have to evolve. They have to evolve with the game and plug the places that needs to be plugged. So that's going to be it from me today. Thank you guys for watching. I do think Electro buffs are coming, most likely in Inazuma, before more Electro characters are released. Let me know what you think in the comments. Subscribe if you like this kind of content. I love discussions. I think currently we can just use a lot more of this as the community currently plays these mini games for fun. I'll see you all in tomorrow's live stream, actually. Maybe we can talk a little more over there. And as always, stay safe and peace.